My name is Daniel Marchand. I am the executive curator of the Phoenix Herpetological Sanctuary in North Scottsdale. So right now this is what we call our main building, our barn building. This is where animals, when they first come to us, would come into, and they would be examined and then evaluated and then placed where they need to in proper locations on our property. So the Phoenix Herpetological Sanctuary started out as just a rescue, really. We were helping game and fish with animals that were brought to the state illegal, or animals that were found wandering in our state somewhere that were not native. So we started rescuing those, and then it grew into educational programs. We were trying to educate kids primarily, just what makes good pets, what to stay away from, and the biggest thing in Arizona is desert safety. How to coexist with our desert, how to live in Arizona without worrying about our rattlesnakes at our feet all the time. How do we avoid them? What do we do if an accident happens? So a lot of desert safety and awareness was really big, and still is today. So I actually grew up on the property, been here since actually 1967. The property was purchased by my family in 1967. The actual house was built in 1972. So growing up out here, it was just desert all around. There were no homes, there were no streets paved and all that. And growing up as a young child in the desert, I learned to love, and primarily reptiles was the main focus. I would catch snakes, I would bring them in the house. Occasionally they got loose, drove my parents crazy. So that's how I grew up out here, and that's my love really started from when I was a small child interacting with the desert. To be here, I have to have a special use permit because we've grown. So we work in conjunction with the city of Scottsdale, who have allowed us to get the permitting and everything to have that portion. But there are a number of animals that are here today that are illegal to own as pets. They've been taken away from individuals because they brought them here illegally. So they've been caught with these animals. And another reason, as we grew and started to develop this place, we found that there were a number of animals that would come to Arizona that were not supposed to be here. And Arizona Game and Fish had no choice but to euthanize these animals because they were danger to the public, danger to our natural wildlife. They wanted to, not have to euthanize things because they were getting a black eye every time they would take something away from somebody, and then because they had no holding facility, they would just euthanize it. So places like PETA and other organizations, Rights for Animals, which we understand, basically we're like really coming down on game and fish. Why are you taking these animals away from people? Why are you killing them? Why aren't you trying to find homes for them and take them away from people and send them to other places? And well, we don't have anybody. And that's when we started working really close with Game and Fish, and we said, hey, we'll do this. We can house the animals, because when an animal first comes in, if it's brought into the state illegal, it has to be held as evidence against that person. So that's the problem. What do? So in the past, what they often would do is they would have to euthanize the animal and then freeze the carcass. And then if the case came to trial and they disputed it, they may have to bring that animal frozen to the courtroom and say, this is what we took from this gentleman, and therefore, that's why he's getting a citation. So we didn't want to see that happen. We wanted the animals to be alive. So they're here today, and we keep them as evidence. And when the case is cleared, they can stay with us, or they can be shipped to other zoos across the country. We've even shipped animals throughout the world. Herpetology is the study of reptiles and amphibians, bottom line. So frogs, toads, reptiles, things of that, lizards, snakes, things like that. There's a mountain that's behind us here that's probably less than a half a mile away. I used to call it Turtle Mountain. I was incorrectly calling that because it should have been called Tortoise Mountain, but I called it Turtle Mountain. And as a young boy, I would ride my dirt bike up there on the weekends, and there were no homes there at the time, so they lived there around the mountain naturally. And I used to go there on the weekends, and I knew where they were hiding, I knew where their burrows were, and I would just go check on them and interact with them a little bit, stay my distance away as I could. But I loved them. I just thought they were fascinating animals. But my love grew, turtles, tortoises, and then of course snakes and lizards, because living in the desert, they were everywhere. And when there was any kind of projects to do in school, if there was reports to be done, I would do it on reptiles. If it was show and tell type of thing, I would go out in the desert the night before, and I'd catch a snake or something and bring it to school and show the class. That's what I loved, and it just grew from there, really. So there's a number of ways we get animals. So there's the legal pet trade. So people buy a cute little lizard that maybe is only 6, 8 inches long, but may grow up to be 6 to 8 feet long. So they get them when they're cute and they're little and they're manageable. And then when they get bigger, they might get more bitey. They get more expensive to take care of as far as housing and feed. So people who can't take care of them would drop them off with us. people that are, here in Arizona that have a tortoise, for example. One of the big things we take in a lot of, and that is tortoise. It'll do very well in Arizona. Obviously, our temperature and conditions are perfect for tortoises. But now they have to move to Minnesota, maybe a job change, maybe going back to help some family members that need some assistance or something. So obviously, a tortoise doesn't do good in Minnesota, so they would leave it with us then. That's the legal side of everything that we do a lot of. But the illegal side is just as big. There are so many things that are brought into the state of Arizona that are just not allowed. People want things that they can't have and they shouldn't have. And it poses a lot of danger to the public, number one, and to our native wildlife, number two. For example, venomous snakes. Venomous snakes from other parts of the world that are brought to Arizona. Number one, we don't have any anti-venom in the state of Arizona for cobras. So if you get bit by a cobra that you brought in as a pet, which you can, I hate to say, legally buy in some states, but you bring it here and you get bit by it, I can't help you. I can't treat you. I can't give you anything to stop what that venom is going to do to your body. We now have to get the anti-venom from another state. And that's been happening for a number of years. That's changed just a little bit because we have recently started an anti-venom bank here at this facility for that reason. But it's still very limited to accessibility to those who have a snake that they shouldn't have. The problem also is somebody who has a cobra knows they're not supposed to have it. So what happens if they get bit by it, they go to the hospital and they said, I got bit by a venomous snake. Well, the hospital's going to treat you thinking it's a rattlesnake. Well, rattlesnake anti-venom does nothing to help you if it's a cobra or a gaboon viper or a mamba. But they're afraid to tell someone that they have an illegal animal, and then again, they could lose their life by doing that. So those animals typically, obviously when we find out about them, Game and Fish gets leads, we get leads. We work with Game and Fish. Those animals are taken away from those individuals before they pose a problem to our native wildlife or individuals themselves. Any given day, there's well over 1,200 animals on this property. So, I mean, it ranges from snakes, lizards, turtles, tortoises to the second largest collection of crocodiles in the United States. So there's always day-to-day maintenance on every animal on the property to some degree. Now some animals like snakes, they only need to eat once a week. They don't eat daily. Tortoises and iguanas, they need to eat daily. Their metabolism's different, their bodies are different. So that type of thing is there's always something going on every day with care and feeding of animals. We do get animals here we had one that was a snake the other day that was brought to us that was at a school and somehow got caught up in the bleachers and was injured, so it's being treated now. If all goes well, then that animal, because it's native to Arizona, will be released back into the desert and live its normal life. But we give it the opportunity, and it has the opportunity to now let us help it and make it better so we can put it back out in the wild. So we get that. Sometimes cars clip animals. I hate to say it, sometimes golfers, because they don't understand how the desert works, they hit them with golf clubs, they try to get them to go away and they injure them, and those things might be brought here and we would treat them and then, if at all possible, released back into the wild. Any animal that's native to Arizona that is brought to us in an injured situation, or somebody pulled it out of their backyard and they said, hey, we found a gopher snake and we don't want the dogs to get it or something, that would be immediately released back into the wild. Other animals that are legal and non-native would either go to, primarily we work firstly with zoos and other sanctuaries and organizations, not only in the United States but in the world. So they could be placed in another zoo type situation where they would be used as an exhibit. Typically, animals have been in captivity for any length of time. There are federal laws and regulations that don't allow us to put them back into their natural habitat because they've been removed from their natural habitat. They've gone to somewhere else in the world. And now, because they've been introduced to different diseases and bacteria that we don't want to now take back and bring back into some part of the world where those animals aren't accustomed to that and may not have any immunities to that, and it could devastate a population of animals. And some of these animals we have, there are numbers right now are very low in the wild, and we don't want to destroy what's out there. So they would have to stay in what they call a more closed or captive situation. If it's a harmless or demure type animal like a tortoise, we do a lot of rehoming, we do a lot of adoptions that way. Tortoises make good, clean, safe pets for kids. Tortoises aren't recognized as an animal that likes to bite or attack anything. So if your kids like that type of thing, we could set you up with a tortoise in your backyard, and it's endless fun for the kids, really.
Often called the mushroom of the gods, lion's mane has a long history of medicinal use. This popular nootropic has been shown to enhance focus and increase cognition, helping you feel more productive and accomplished. Research studies have also shown that lion's mane is neuroprotective, giving you peace of mind as you power through your day. Try lion's mane and experience the mental clarity and productivity boost you've been missing.
There's actually three groupings when you talk about the group of crocodilian. There's alligators, which there's two types of alligators in the world, the American alligator and the Chinese alligator. Then you have the caiman, which is generally a more smaller grouping of animals, and then you have crocodiles themselves. So there's three major groupings that you'll find out there. The alligator, when you look at the animal, if you're trying to ID something and you're at another zoo or a park and you're like, what is that? An alligator is going to have a shorter, much more rounded snout on the nose. And when its mouth is closed, very easy to determine, only the upper row of teeth on an alligator are exposed that you can see to the outside. As where a crocodile, you're going to have a much longer, narrow nose, and when its mouth is closed, both upper and lower teeth are exposed. So it's a quick ID that you can look at if you're looking at an animal to determine alligator or crocodile. Poison, generally, poison is a chemical. So if you go under your kitchen sink and you grab some Drano and you clean the drain, that's a poison, it's a chemical. Now if you ingest that poison, yes, you can be killed by it and it could do a lot of damage to you. Venom is what an animal has, and venom has to be injected into your body through the way of a bite or a sting. So spiders, scorpions, and venomous snakes all have to bite you or sting you and then administer the venom into your body, where then it does its job. In the wild, it's designed to kill food items or prey. In humans, obviously it can kill us, but that's not what its intentions are. But when we get tangled up with rattlesnakes in Arizona, that could occur and that could happen. Maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was no anti-venom available anywhere here on the West Coast. There was one anti-venom bank, and that was in Florida. And so if anybody anywhere other than Florida got bit, hospitals would have to contact the Florida anti-venom bank, and they would have to then fly it out as quickly as they possibly can. So being here on the West Coast, California, Arizona, Utah, things like that, we are a good 5 to 7 hours away from that anti-venom, even by plane. So it poses a big problem because some snakes don't give you 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to survive. We need to get that, some snakes, we need to administer anti-venom within 20 to 30 minutes to save your life. Doing this for the number of years that we've been doing this, we just kept seeing that this problem of people bringing in venomous snakes wasn't going away. We were hearing more and more about people that were getting bit by venomous snakes that had them illegally or in private type collections, and we wanted to change that. We wanted to do something to help. And the biggest thing too is our law enforcement, game and fish, police, fire. If they go into a situation where there's a venomous snake and they get bit, they themselves are going to be jeopardized by waiting for 5 hours or more. And we really wanted to do something. We felt we really needed to do something here on the West Coast. We needed something that we could have something here that would help in case of a bad situation. So it's a long process. There is so much red tape. The problem with anti-venom is that it's coming from other parts of the world. It's not FDA approved. So this is a huge problem. How do I take and get a drug basically from another world country and want to administer into you with no real testing, so to speak? They do their own form of testing. They don't have FDAs. They basically, test it on you, and it's good or bad. They find out real quick. But that's tough. There's a lot of red tape, again, to go through that to bring in unregulated drugs into the United States. But there are ways to do it. There's a ton of paperwork. It's very well guarded. They can show it to you later if you want. But everybody now on the West Coast knows that we have it, and we've put the word out that if anything happens, they can contact us. And we have an anti-venom group. So those zoos and sanctuaries and facilities here on the West Coast, they can sign up with us, and that way, if anything happens, they know where to get it. We know what they need. We'd get it to them. Obviously, nothing illegal should be owned by anybody. Illegal animals, typically, you're talking about zoos that have permitting, and there are places like ours are inspected and made sure they're secure. There are a number of animals that are good pets. Turtles on the lower end of the scale, really. Tortoise is number one, really good pet. There are some lizards like the bearded dragon, great. Some geckos, great pets for kids. We don't want to deprive kids of the ability to interact with these things and find and have a love for them, because you don't know where the next big herpetologist is going to come from unless we give them the opportunity to interact with some of these things. But we know, like big boas and big pythons, not that they shouldn't be owned by individuals, but they should be owned by the right individual. An individual that has worked with smaller species for a number of years and now worked their way up to larger snakes. Therefore, they understand what they're getting into. A snake, pound for pound, is 8 times stronger than man. So that you're taking a snake, and when it weighs 282 pounds, and you're talking about 12 men to properly restrain that because of the strength that it has. An individual by himself can't handle that big of a snake. He really needs to understand what that snake's capabilities are, what his limitations are, and what he can and can't get away with working with that snake. And someone who's been doing it for years can safely and properly own a big snake, but they need to have the experience. So primarily built this to save the reptiles. Again, before we built this facility, when reptiles were illegally brought here or found abandoned in homes or in the desert, they would have been unfortunately euthanized by Game and Fish because they had no holding facility. And with my love of reptiles and a few of us who got together said, look, we want to change this. I've got 2.5 acres of property here in the desert. We can build habitats for these things. We don't need to destroy these animals anymore. Let us hold them as evidence. Once it's cleared, then let us allocate the animals to other places, or maybe they might still be here on display. We can show, believe it or not, you know, this crazy venomous snake, which is one of the most venomous snakes in the world, was taken from a house in Glendale. You know, this is something we can show. This happens. People think, oh, it doesn't happen to me or it doesn't happen in my backyard. It happens every day. So it's a good learning tool for us to keep something like that to show people. I have snakes here that have actually killed individuals, that have had them as pets, that have interacted with them and they didn't have proper training or knowledge and were bitten by the snake and then unfortunately have died. So that's a snake that's here. That's a great education animal, because now I can say this snake right here killed a 22-year-old boy. Okay, there's a story behind it. And that's why, as a young individual, you shouldn't go out in the desert and collect even a simple rattlesnake, because even though the anti-venom is available, it still can kill you if you make a mistake. So that's why, you know, they're great learning tools. You got to realize probably 97% of the general people out there are afraid of snakes. So sometimes coming into this room with a lot of snakes, or my venomous room, they won't even enter the room sometimes. And if they do, they're being held by their loved one because they're scared to death. But it's a very safe atmosphere. It allows you to see the animals. You know, snakes aren't wet, snakes aren't slimy, snakes don't come after you. I mean, there's a lot of myths out there. So we try to get people comfortable. But I mean, you know, kids, I mean, obviously kids love this. I mean, I say kids, I have adults they're more enthralled when they come here than kids are sometimes, because they can come and see an animal in a setting that, even in a zoo, a conventional zoo, we are a zoo, we have a zoo license, but in a conventional zoo setting, sometimes animals are far away, they're difficult to see. Here, it's a little bit more intimate and a little bit closer. I can get you a little bit closer, but very safe. So you can now see these animals, you can see characteristics of the animals, features about the animal. Again, educational wise, we have school programs, we have crocodilian club. Kids come out here and get to see animals behave more naturally up close, and they can observe them. So it's really from kids to adults. There is no one specific group. I mean, if you really, really hate reptiles, I still have people that come out here and they still love it. I mean, everybody loves a turtle or a tortoise. You know, that's an easy sell. But when you start getting to the snake room, a little bit tougher, but great little story. 86-year-old woman came to one of our programs we did off property, and she brought her granddaughter to our program, and she stayed outside, and it was kind of hot. And we said, well, why don't you come inside and enjoy the cooler temperatures and the animals? She goes, oh, no, I'm 87 years old. I'm afraid of snakes. I'm afraid to death of snakes. No way I'm going in there. Before we left that day, we had her in the building, sitting down with one of our largest snakes draped across her lap. She was only scared because that's all she was taught as a young child, that snakes are bad, snakes are dangerous, snakes are slimy. Whatever it was that scared her to death, that's all she knew. And by the end of the day, we had her with one of our biggest snakes. And again, that's a breakthrough. That's something we feel good about, that we can get her to get rid of that fear. She has a respect. There are snakes we have to respect because they're danger. But again, breaking that is just fantastic. And the other one I have to tell you is the School of the Blind. We've worked with blind kids. Now, kids go to a zoo, and I experienced this firsthand one day when going to one of our programs. We had animals in cages, and the mom was with her son, and I saw her looking in the cage, and she was describing to her son the animals. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. I then realized that the young boy was visually impaired. And mom was describing the color, the possible, what she thought might be the texture. And I walked up to her and I said, would you mind, is he afraid of reptiles? She goes, oh, he loves reptiles. Everything he can do, he wants to do with reptiles. I said, if he's not afraid, would he like to touch something? So then I started taking out animals that we use for education. He can now feel them. He was interacting with them, holding them. Never had this experience in a zoo atmosphere ever before. The lady was tearing up. The boy was ecstatic. A week later, she wrote me a letter and she said he's still talking about it. He can't tell you how much fun he had, but it was an experience where I was able to get somebody and work with them. So when we then hooked up with the School of the Blind, we go there and we bring animals, we sit the kids on the floor, they get to interact with them. I mean, this is stuff that we love doing. We keep growing new programs, we keep venturing out further and further and finding other ways to reach the public, reach people out there and let them enjoy what we get to enjoy every day. We do a lot with universities and other groups that are doing studies where they need now it's humane studies, by the way. We don't kill animals to study them. But for example, alligators and crocodiles are immune to so many different bacteria like staphylococcus and all these things that are deadly to humans. Alligators are immune to a lot of this stuff. So they do studies, they draw blood, they do all kinds of different research. So we can participate in that now because we have a large number of animals, and it's not just one sometimes. At least we have several of them. It's not like, okay, well, we tested the animal, well, that worked for that, but what about, is it the same in every other alligator or crocodile? We don't, if you only do one, you really don't know until you have multiples. And again, you can do multiples, but you may be traveling all over the United States to get that research. Well, you may be able to now do a lot of that research at one stop, one location, so it makes it easier. So working with the universities, working with colleges, looking with anybody who's trying to do that specific type of research, we've done a lot of that type of thing. So, we feel very necessary and very grateful to be able to help with that. When I get to work with a visually impaired child and see the smile on his face, nothing better. It's just nothing better than that. But the other thing is knowing that I can save an animal from a situation. Maybe it's poorly housed, from somebody taking a snake and putting it in our desert where it wouldn't survive properly or live and be comfortable. Being able to make this place and house these animals correctly and give them a good life makes me feel good at the end of the day. The biggest thing is, is snakes are evil. I mean, that's probably one we battle all the time, that stereotype that, like I said, snakes are not slimy. They're not out to chase you down and kill you, but that's Hollywood unfortunately makes movies. They don't make snakes glamorous, they make them villains. So that's what people think, that's what they see, that's what they're told. And it's just being able to break that is awesome, to show. You see a snake, get to hold a snake, it's like, why isn't it trying to attack? Because it doesn't want to. Even when we go on, rattlesnake removals, people think, well, it was in my yard and if I stepped outside it could have chased me. And I go there and I say, I'll show you why it's not and what it'll do if I approach it. It usually runs away from me. I said, this is what we get to do. We get to educate, and that's our big goal.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy our documentaries as much as we enjoy making them. Unfortunately, many of our videos don't earn enough YouTube revenue to afford the cost of production. But if you like our content, the best thing you can do is directly support it on Patreon. Plus, you'll get access to behind-the-scenes vlogs and commentary. If you're looking for something more in return, go to paragraphic.io where you can buy our other products and services. Alternatively, you can shop our Amazon storefront for our favorite equipment recommendations. Also, check out Boca, where you can find beneficial supplements to optimize your productivity. We especially love the lion's mane and mushroom gummies. And finally, consider signing up to Multitude, a platform built for long-form content, where you and other content creators can share and monetize new videos every week.